Hello, mediums. Welcome to another episode of Live. I'm Josh Hayes, here with my co-host, the man who inspired Mr. Bean versus the world, Scott Moon. And today we're talking with best-selling author Jennifer Foehner Wells. Jennifer is the author of the Confluence series and her upcoming space opera novel, The Druid Gene, which we're going to talk about today. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
You're very welcome. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come out and hang out with us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing?
Writing is something that I always excelled at. In grade school, I went to young authors conferences. It was something that I enjoyed. Reading was, I read like I breathed. I mean, I read constantly, everything I could get my hands on. I had trouble finding science fiction novels as a kid, and so I would read my mom's thrillers, her romance novels, whatever. She would bring home boxes of books from yard sales. I would read them. So I was always a big reader. I always wanted to be a writer. I remember the principal at my very small rural grade school asking us all what we wanted to be when we grew up, and I said writer. And I guess I was kind of a favorite, so he brought in a writer to talk to my class, and I was such a practical child that I asked the author, so what do you do, what other things can writers do if they can't sell books? I was so nervous. Like, I was just like, what if I can't make it? It's always been the thing that's held me back.
Right.
So I wrote a lot. I started several novels throughout, my 20s and 30s, and just got kind of hung up and never finished them. And then essentially what happened was I was a stay-at-home mom, and my kids were getting a little older and didn't need me every second of the day as they do in hours. Yeah. And I kind of started to realize that I had like dishwasher loading protocols and laundry sorting rules and vacuuming rules, and I was just kind of like, one day it just hit me, like, I'm trying to give my brain something to do with all of these crazy neurotic things I'm doing, so maybe I should occupy my brain with something positive, something that can actually take me somewhere. So I started writing fan fiction at that point, and it was really popular. People really liked it, and my then husband at the time read it and said, "What are you doing? Why are you writing fan fiction? You should be writing for profit." So that kind of, all those things kind of boosted my confidence. It was always my confidence that had held me back. I just never thought that my ideas were good enough, or that I was creative enough or smart enough to write a book that other people would like. But with that sort of boost, I just went ahead and started writing Fluency. It took me about a year to write to write Fluency, and that was in 2011. And then I took all of, that was 2012. I took all of 2013 to revise it and workshop it with my local critique group and those kinds of things. And then put it through some editing processes, and then published in June of 2014. And the rest is history, as they say.
Awesome. Obviously whatever you did worked, because Fluency became a smash hit and sold very well and garnered several thousand reviews. You said that you workshopped it and got an editing over the first year, that 2013. How much did the story change for you from the original draft to the published draft? Any at all?
Not a lot. I mean, it was really minor changes. It was more than just line editing or proofreading, but it was, I added a few scenes that people felt were missing. Mm-hmm. I toned down some of the language. Too much cursing, apparently.
Which is funny, because a lot of the books that do well, like The Martian, has tons of cursing in it. Like, it starts with cursing, and then I see a lot of.
You always need to warn them, and not on that first page if you can.
Oh yeah.
One of my characters curses a lot, and I actually get a lot of bad reviews because of that.
Yeah. Set the tone early.
Yeah, you really should. I can't remember who said that. Maybe Stephen King. That if you're, no, I bet it was Neil Gaiman. If you're gonna put cursing in a book, you really should put it on the first page.
Right.
Yeah.
First paragraph, preferably, so they know.
Right.
So, yeah.
You want to fulfill reader expectations. I had a question about the workshop. How did you pick a workshop, or where do you find it, or how did you fall into that?
That's a great question. Well, I was looking for a writing group, and I sort of joined two at that time. I joined one that was sort of more, it was mostly women, and most of them were writing, they were mostly writing women's fiction. And then I met this other group probably about 2 weeks later, and they were meeting in a local sci-fi fantasy bookstore, all sci-fi fantasy.
Right.
And they were all sci-fi fantasy. So they had met for NaNoWriMo. And so I joined them too. And I ended up dropping the first group and just sticking with the other group. And we've been together since then. There are only 4 members left, basically. So, it's we still exchange manuscripts and give each other critiques and hang out from time to time and have a beer. That's so.
Give critiques after you have the beer. That way they can be like.
Sometimes the critiques come first and then the beer.
Yeah. I didn't like the way that your sentence started with a question or preposition. Blah, blah, blah.
So, did you have like rules with your group, or what was the format? This is something we haven't talked a lot about on our show. Is doing a workshopping a piece of fiction.
Yeah.
So there were rules. Generally, we would try to give people at least 2 weeks to a month to read a manuscript. This particular group preferred to do finished manuscripts rather than sections, and just because it's easier to sort of tell where something's going if you can see the whole piece at once. Generally, mainly the main rule was that you have to start with something positive. You always have to start with something positive, and the criticism needs to be constructive. So, no bashing was allowed. And we were all intelligent people with, most of us had kids, and so, we were legitimately all very interested in getting better too. So we all had, picked up different skills along the way, and we were able to help each other sort of develop some of those things as well. So it worked out really well for me, and hopefully for them eventually too. Actually 2 other people in that group now have agents, and two of those same people also have contracts with traditional publishing, big 5, big 4, whatever it is now.
Very cool.
Yes, and one of them has got a contract with a small publisher, and has published many short stories on prestigious writing magazine, or sci-fi magazine, sci-fi fantasy and horror. And so, we're a talented group. So
It sounds like it. Well, when we started out, you were talking about getting started and the confidence thing and stuff. So how hard is it to go and then go to that first group and say, here's my completed manuscript or my story, and tell me what you think, and try not to be mean.
Yeah, that first time I brought Fluency to the group, I was on the verge of barfing before I went. I was so nervous because I felt like they were all really talented and super smart, and I liked them all. I didn't want them to be like, oh, we have to deal with this talentless hack now. I'm trying to help her. So
I think that's a very common feeling because I feel the same way when I read my stuff that I'm getting ready to send out to my friends. I'm like, oh God, please don't hate this. And then they come back to me and they're like, man, that was really good. And I'm like, all right, did you read the same thing that I sent you? Because I'm not sure if you did or not.
Yeah.
I also find it interesting. You said that you do completed works in your workshop, because one of my biggest problems with going to writers groups is when they critique a piece of it and they don't know the whole context, you can get kind of sidetracked, and then your story changes and it takes a right turn where it should have went left. So I think that's actually a good idea. It also requires a lot more commitment
time-wise. So
yeah.
And did you guys meet in person, or was this like an online thing?
Yeah, no, it's funny because I live in a fairly small town in Indiana, and but yeah, there were enough people.
I think there's something to say about meeting in person rather than meeting online, because if you meet in person, you're less apt to say not rude things, but just you're less apt to be like extremely blunt with that person and say, man, that was horrible, you need to do this.
Right. I think, yeah, there's some personal responsibility that comes into play there. You know, when you know you're going to see them again next week.
Right. Yeah.
And we all became great friends. So we would meet, we would have our meeting and then we would go out to dinner together afterwards. So
that's very cool. And so you've written 2 novels now that are out,
yes.
Fluency and Remanence?
Remanence, yes.
Remanence. And those are both in the same series, with the same characters.
Yes.
And now you're getting ready to publish your 3rd book in that universe, but it's not in the same series.
Right.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, my new book, I'm finishing up the line editing now. Just got it back a few days ago from my editor. It's called The Druid Gene, and it is it's all new characters and a new kind of challenge, and it's very different from the other 2 books. So you're going to get to see a new side of my storytelling ability, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear what people think. The beta readers so far seem to like it. So
when you say different, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Your first one was kind of like an exploration, first contact book, where you're learning about these new aliens and what's going on with them, and that kind of follows through into the second book. What do you think will set this 3rd one apart from your other series?
This series is more of a superhero origin story.
Okay.
And it starts with an alien abduction. So
very nice.
what we come to find that Darcy, the main character, there's something special about her that she doesn't know. So through the course of the story, she learns more and more about the Druid Gene and what it means to her. Hopefully that people will think that mystery is exciting.
And these, like I said, they're in the same universe. So eventually, are they going to come together?
Yes. My plan is for the 2 series to intertwine because there's a big sort of showdown that's coming up in the Confluence series, and the Druid series will come into play to help out with that. So.
Oh, that's very cool. When you started writing Fluency, did you have an idea that this is where it was going to go, or has this kind of been a fluid production as you've been writing over the last couple of years?
No, I always had sort of a story arc in mind. It changes a little bit because for me, planning something like a book or a series is a very analytical sort of mindset, and it's you sort of sit down and you sort of think about the possibilities, and you make an outline or whatever. But what I find is that when I'm actually writing and in a sort of creative framework of mind, I tend to think of much better ideas, and so then I'm always sort of revising what the outline is.
Right.
I always end up in the same place, but I take a different route to get there.
Right.
Fluency, for example, could have been a completely different book. I had really, really different ideas. It was originally going to be just a standalone novel, and probably about midway through, I came up with an idea to make it a series, and that's when sort of everything changed. By the end of the book was still pretty much the same, but there was going to be a throughput through to the next book. So,
right.
Yeah.
When writing that the Confluence series, you have a female lead, and then you also have a male main character, and then you have the aliens and the crew. Who was your favorite character to write?
Probably, okay. Alan Bergen is most like me, like as far as like his sort of how do I put it? He's sort of snarky and just like says what he thinks, putting it all out there, cursing a lot.
Right.
He's really fun to write. But I guess really my favorite is A.E. Bry, because he's so sort of condescending and just sort of I don't know. He's vulnerable, but he's super smart, and I don't know. He's fun. He's really, and because he's an alien, he's super fun to write. So
yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
You've also written several short stories. You're featured in the Future Chronicles a couple times.
Yeah,
I want to say. We like to talk about the difference between writing short stories and writing full-length novels. We've done an interview series on a anthology that we're a part of, and it's interesting to hear writers talk about how much different it is writing short stories and novel length works. What was it like stepping back and then creating these short stories for these anthologies? Did you have a lot of fun with that? Do you like short stories?
I like short stories now. Growing up, I never liked short stories. When they were assigned in high school and college, I dreaded that, because for me, they always felt unsatisfying. Like they were too short, they weren't immersive, and so I never liked them. As an adult, I found that short stories are much harder to write than novels in some ways. It's great that they're shorter and you get that completion faster, which is kind of cool. You get a finished product, but every word counts, every single word. I mean, you got to pack a punch into every paragraph. And because it's so short, and because I like to write in an immersive style, that really means I have to do a lot of world building in a small space.
Right.
And so, it's for me, it's more challenging. I've always felt like I wasn't as good at short story writing as I am at novel writing. But people seem to like them, and it's a great introduction to my universe. So, we like.
Are your short stories based in your universe?
They all are. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had the same experience with short stories that I appreciate them now, I think, more than I did. But I remember in college and growing up that it seemed like it took a lot of work to read a short story for what you're getting out of it. It's like the writers of short stories usually seem like they're trying really hard to impress somebody, and they don't feel as natural as a novel.
Yeah.
Especially if you're reading them in college, because they're always going to be some sort of
hook or something that. And I remember when I was writing my first short story, which was literally for the Future Chronicles, I was like, I don't know how to write a gimmicky hook. I was like, what kind of twist can I put on this story that's going to surprise everybody? Because that's what a short story does, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess what I just decided to do is write a compressed novel. Just tell a story in a shorter form.
Beginning, middle, and end, maybe not quite so many points of view. And
and fewer ups and downs.
Yeah. Now we kind of danced around this a little bit. It's a question we normally ask about planning versus discovery writing. I kind of getting a sense to which way you're going on that, but I'd be curious to hear you talk about it.
I am probably hybrid, I guess, because I do sit down and very seriously. Well, first of all, let me just say this. I stew on a novel for weeks before I start writing it. Before I start doing anything, I'm thinking about all the possibilities. I'm talking to friends about what they think about what if I did this, what if I did that, what if I went this direction, and then I just start to. Then I sit down. I have a document that I work from, and it basically asks me questions about every stage of the novel. This is something I created for myself years ago. And so I go through it step by step and try to think, okay, at this stage in the novel, what is happening, and I work through it that way. But like I said earlier, sometimes when I get to those points, I've started to veer in a new direction, or I've thought of something better. Those kind of things happen a lot.
Oh yeah, because you get into the story, you get creative.
Yeah, the creative mode brings out a different side than the sort of analytical mode. When you're sort of analytically thinking about something, your brain processes the ideas a little bit differently than when you're actually in the flowing moment where the words are coming out. It tends to. I think that you tend to get better ideas. And actually, one of my favorite things to recommend to new writers is to look up. There's a YouTube video of John Cleese talking about creativity.
Right.
It's not very long. He's very smart. His parents were scientists, and so he takes a very scientific look at what creativity is and what it takes to be more creative. And I found that really early on when I was writing Fluency, and I found it super helpful. So I strongly advise people to take a look at that.
Got that pulled up for after the. I like John Cleese. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you mentioned that you started publishing in 2014. Obviously, you've been writing for a lot longer than that. Are you a full-time writer now, or do you have a day job, or how does that work with you?
I am a full-time writer. I'm also a single mom.
So you have two full-time jobs.
Yes. So I am supporting my family with my writing. So
awesome.
Now the books are not coming out every 2 years. They're coming out hopefully 2 a year if I can manage it. So yeah, it's put a lot of pressure on me to try to make ends meet and to make, keep everybody happy and healthy and getting them enough attention.
Right.
And not be buried in my computer all day.
Yeah.
I'm always striving to find balance. But yeah, that's
what is your process like in a day of writing?
Well, it varies. But generally speaking, I get up and I drink coffee.
Amen.
And
start with you.
Drink a lot of coffee, and then generally, I kind of warm up a little bit to the world by checking my social media and my email, and then I just launch into writing mode. And right now, I'm not in writing mode at all because I'm editing. But on most days, I try to get a good 2 to even 6 hours of writing a day. My goal is to always get at least 1,000 words a day, preferably closer to 2,000 or more if I can. It really just depends on, what's going on in the house, that day. Like today, there's a child that's sick, so that slows things down a little bit. So, but that's it's every day. I mean, I work on weekends too. I don't take days off hardly ever. Yeah.
What's the famous Stephen King quote from years ago that he said he writes every day except for Christmas and his birthday? And if you read his, I'm sure you probably have his,
and it's something you have to keep up with, or
it's funny. I went for a few months in the spring where I wrote every day and I hit 1,000 words every day, and then I had a break where I had a whole bunch of projects that I had to do that was writing related, but wasn't actually writing. Like we had an anthology come out this last month, and we were doing a whole bunch of interview videos for that anthology. And so we recorded probably like 15 hours worth of interviews, and then I had to edit.
We've been working you like a dog this month.
I had to edit all those together and, do all that stuff. And so I broke out. I didn't get a whole lot of writing done. So now trying to get back into that zone of writing every day and getting those words is it's tough once you lose it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people track the words every day like it's kind of a ritual. You said 1,000 words a day, but when you're editing, do you just let that go? Do you have some other way to track your daily productivity?
No, just hours put in, really.
Right.
Yeah, I keep a spreadsheet and make myself mark down. It's a shaming tool. If I don't get the words I need,
Yeah.
then shame.
I
But
I have a bit of a spreadsheet problem myself. So I actually did
a lot
dial
of
it
writers
down.
are like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
my friend Brandon Sanger got me on the spreadsheet, and we used to share them. Our whole writing group, we shared one big spreadsheet, and then we were shaming each other. I mean, nobody ever said anything, but we're all like, "Oh God, Brandon got 3,000 words today."
Right.
It's not bad.
Scott and I tried to do that last year. We tried to do it with a couple other people that were in
Did it for a while.
we're in a YouTube, not a YouTube, a Facebook group called Space Opera and Space Opera Writers, and we had the admins of those channels, Scott McGlasson and Roy Upton. On
Yeah, I used to belong to that group.
yeah, and we had the spreadsheet up, and it went well for like the first month, and then after the first month, everybody stopped putting the numbers on the spreadsheet, and it just went away.
Yeah.
So Scott, it's good that you asked that question because I was getting ready to ask the editing question. When you edit, you send it off to an editor and then you bring it back. Do you do copy editing? You said you had a couple editors look at Fluency. How do you normally go about that? I mean, you do your developmental and then your copy, or is your developmental pretty much done when you send it off to your editor?
Well, my process is that when I finish a novel, I do my own revision first. Usually as I'm writing, I've been taking notes of things I want to change. I do a read through and then I change some more. Then I send it off to my developmental editor. He has it for usually about 10 days. Then I take about a month, usually, or 6 weeks, depending on how his schedule is looking, to make the changes that he's suggested. During that time, I've also often sent it out to beta readers too, just to get sort of a first opinion from readers to see what they liked and didn't like. And sometimes that coincides with what the developmental editor says, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's always interesting.
So who wins?
It really depends. It's a gut check for me.
Right.
I don't change anything unless it resonates with me. And I'm able to step back from the story and really think about what is best for the story. I'm not one of these writers who thinks of my writing as precious and it shouldn't be changed and this is my art. And I really, let's face it, I write pulp, I write popular fiction. So, I need to please the reader, not myself.
Right.
And so, you have to be careful when you have a bunch of people reading and make sure you're not changing, too much. But you strike a balance, and I really feel like I kind of take a gut check on every single comment, like, how would this change the story? What does this mean? And then I decide whether or not to make the change. So I finish that up. Then it goes to my line editor. So generally I don't do a proofread or I do a line edit instead. That's instead of just looking for typos, it's a line editor looks at grammar. They do some fact checking. There's a whole slew. It's more comprehensive.
Right.
I like to do that instead of just a proofread. I have in the past done a proofread too after, and what I found was, I was paying this guy to proofread it, and he found like 3 errors because my line editor is so good.
Nice.
So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to pay for that next time.
Yeah.
So
You get to a
Well,
point
but on
where
the
it's redundant.
conversely though, he could have found 1,000. So it's good to see that.
right, it was really good to have that check. Usually some of my most dedicated fans tend to send me the errors that they find, and that's nice too. So I can go in to the document, change it, and upload it to the Kindle store very quickly, and it can be, pretty much pristine, perfect document then for the readers. So,
Do you differentiate between a beta reader and like an advanced reading team? I know
I
some
don't
people
generally do advanced reading teams.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, I haven't needed to. Generally speaking, I get reviews within just a few days of putting something up. So when I put Fluency up, I didn't know that I needed to do that. Like, I was such a noob that I was like, well, I'll just put this up for sale and we'll see what happens. And a lot of stuff happened. So
Yeah.
I didn't really need to do any of that stuff. And so I haven't ever done it. The beta readers are generally people that I'm pretty close to. For example, with the Confluence series, the second book, Remanence, I actually have some NASA scientists and some physicists and people like that who check over my science. Those are very special beta readers for me.
Yeah.
So there isn't as much of that kind of science in the Druid gene, so I opted not to do those, to bother them with that.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's been something that I've done. I take that pretty seriously.
So with your beta readers, how did you? Those are different from your critique group, obviously, but
well, no, there is some overlap there, but yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
How did you come up with the beta readers? Did you put a request out and then kind of weed through those and see who would do it? Because I've had a few beta readers that said, "Yeah, I'll beta read your book," and I send it to them, and then I never hear back from them, or they just tell me I didn't like it or I did like it. So good beta readers are hard to come by, where they leave you notes and tell you, "Hey, I didn't understand this." How did you collect your group?
Well, first of all, I mean, the critique group that I told you about, that's my core group.
Right.
But then, as far as other beta readers go, I sort of I have a very large circle of other writing friends, and generally speaking, I don't bother them with stuff like this, but occasionally they're kind of like, oh, I would really love to read this for you. And then I'm like, well, hey, let's just add them to the beta reader group. So
it's kind of a natural process.
I don't have a huge list of people that I do that with, because I am paying a developmental editor.
Right.
So that's that. And then, of course, basically what happened, the way I got the NASA guys and the other scientists was basically they sent me notes through my website saying, I'm a NASA JPL scientist and I loved your book. I think it's great. And I sort of started a list of these people: aeronautic engineer, structural engineer, mechanical engineer, these people, what they do, and to be able to get in contact with them again when I put Remanence together. So that's what I did.
And
that's pretty.
Go ahead, Scott.
So that's pretty cool when you start getting that kind of traction and you get fans like that, and you cherish all your fans, but especially something like that.
Yeah.
I had another question, Josh, if you don't have one right this second.
I
was going to ask, because we haven't talked much about, marketing and business now, and you said some things you just didn't know you needed to do it. You put them out there. Now, how much preparation before or during with marketing savvy have you tried to develop? Is that something you worry about at all, or you just write and go for it?
It's not something that I do a lot of.
Right.
But I have to come clean, I guess. There is something that helped me before I launched Fluency, I think. I don't know what percentage of the contribution was or what exactly happened, but when I first started writing Fluency, I had done tons of research into traditional publishing, self-publishing, and trying to decide which way I was going to try to go. And so I was following a lot of successful self-publishers at that time. And some of the advice that I came across, and I was on Twitter, and I just had 10 followers or whatever. Yeah. So I came across an author who suggested following people that, would probably like your books, and following a large number of them every day as sort of part of your job. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing that. If they didn't follow me back, then I just unfollowed them. It was that simple. Right. So I built up, over the 2 years that I wrote and revised Fluency, I built up 10,000 followers on Twitter, all of whom were sci-fi fantasy readers, or at least fans of television shows that sort of thing.
Right.
And so I had this sort of group that I interacted with daily, and I was very committed to posting interesting things, crazy science stories, stories about sci-fi, fantasy, fandoms, movies, TV shows, you name it. I was talking about it. If it was related to science or sci-fi, I was talking about it. And I always interact with pretty much every person. I really try to reply to almost everybody if I can. And I would tweet about my quirky life with my kids and the crazy things they say, the crazy things my dogs do, all of that stuff. And so when my book came out, I tweeted about it maybe 3 or 4 times on the first day. 500 people bought my book that day.
Oh yeah, that's a great launch.
That'll do it.
So yeah, so from there, the algorithms on Amazon sort of kicked in and made it more visible. The cover is great. The cover art is, I mean, it's very attractive. I think it's always been one of the strongest selling points for the book.
Absolutely.
And,
that's what drew me to the book when I got it.
Right. And so that was sort of, it just sort of snowballed from there. And again, I was shocked. I mean, I had thought that I would be lucky if in sort of 6 years I could be making from writing what I might make at a part-time job bagging groceries while my kids are at school.
Right.
That was my goal.
Yeah.
I had no idea, none. I couldn't have planned for that to happen. And I was, of course, very pleased, but wow, what a shocker. It was, I remember that day, I just kept refreshing the KDP page on Amazon, and I thought it was a joke. I mean, I thought, is it my book they're buying, or do they have me confused with someone else? Like, other Jennifer Foehner Wells out there? Yeah, I don't know. So
that's
it
awesome.
was
You
crazy.
gotta get those moments. You need to appreciate them because it's a big deal, to kind of break through like that.
And that's interesting because you mentioned the cover, and that is why that I bought the book, because it is fantastic. I mean, when you talk about science fiction covers, Scott and I were actually talking about this the other day. When you go and look on ebooks, you have a lot of companies that have
variance.
pre-made covers and cover design people that do your covers, and you go for the standard ship, planet, space model that everybody goes through and everybody uses the same spaceship. When you did your cover, obviously you went a different direction where you could have just said, I'll do this stock art kind of thing, and you went a different direction and got a custom painted art that is beautiful. Did you do that purposely when you went to release the book, or was it just that I don't like all these other covers, I want something different?
Again, it just goes back to me not knowing what the heck I was doing. I mean, I was just like, well, I mean, I didn't even know that those people who made covers existed. I sort of thought that, well, traditional publishing hires an artist to make the cover, so this is what I'll do too.
Right.
Kind of a crazy kind of logic with that.
I'm sorry?
It's kind of a crazy kind of logic. Hey, let's model ourselves after, the professionals,
Right. Oh, yeah. My goal from the beginning was to make my book indistinguishable from traditional publishing, if I could. That was my goal. So basically what happened was I kind of just had my eye out for an artist that I, felt like could produce aesthetically what I was looking for.
Right.
And but it was a full year before I published Fluency when I ran across a National Geographic website with a beautiful piece of artwork on it, and it happened. It doesn't always happen, but in this case, the artist was attributed. So I Googled him because I loved the art. I couldn't stop looking at it. I kept the tab open on my browser because I kept going back to look at it. So I sent him an email and I was like, do you do covers? And he was like, yeah. And I said, well, how much, would you charge? And he quoted me a figure that I couldn't afford as a stay-at-home mom, no income. And so I kind of I let it go for like a day, like, crap, I can't afford that. That's the, and then some part of me was just like, well, be polite, just email him back and say, I'm sorry, I can't afford that, but maybe someday when I'm, famous, I'll be able to afford you.
Right.
And he emailed me back and said, what can you afford? And I quoted a figure and he said, I'll do it for that.
Oh, wow. That's very
There you
cool.
go.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so then I found out who he was. He is Stéphane Martinière. He is a French digital artist and concept artist out of Texas, and he works on he worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, and
very nice.
It's so funny because when I contacted him and asked him to do the cover for Remanence, he was like, "Yeah, I'll get on that as soon as I'm done with this Spielberg film." I was like, "All right, yeah, I got
Nice.
Okay.
Well, that was fun. And it was just serendipity. I mean, I've been lucky in a lot of ways. I came to self-publishing at a really good time, still early on when it was really growing. It's still growing, but at this point, there's so much to choose from that it can get a little overwhelming for readers to pick things.
Right.
So I was lucky at that point. And the social media, it was a good time for that. I don't think if I tried to build a huge social media following now that I would have the same kind of success that I did.
I was going to ask you that earlier, if you thought Twitter was still effective.
It is. I mean, it's still my biggest platform. It's still where I spend the most time and I enjoy it the most. But I do think that because of all of the sort of the climate with some of the trollish behavior that you see on Twitter, it does discourage some people from spending as much time there as they used to.
Yeah,
so
right. There's a lot of automation going on some of
that
those,
too.
so.
And Twitter is really cracking down on that as well. So there's if they suspect that there's any automation on your account, they'll shut you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I try to get into Twitter. I still tweet, if that's the right
You're
verbiage.
It is.
But man, when I get on there, like with Facebook, you get on and I've done Facebook for so long, I can just look and see and understand what I'm looking at. And then when I go to Twitter and I scroll through my Twitter feed, I'm like, book advert, book advert, book advert, book advert. And it's just,
Usually
I don't want to
get
look at all that. It's hard to find like what I'm looking for in Twitter. Maybe it's just that I don't spend enough time and I don't know what I'm doing. But like, I want to have like a conversation about it. It's tough.
Yeah. I think, when you basically the people that are doing things like book spam on Twitter, they're not actually going to be selling any books because people are scrolling right past that just like you are.
Right.
I do not engage in that sort of behavior. That does not sell books. So I would advise you to either unfollow those people or if you don't want to do that because they're friends or whatever, another option is to create a list of the people that you want to most pay attention to.
Right.
And then you only look at the list. And that's how I manage Twitter. I have different lists of different kinds of things that I want to pay attention to. So between that and answering every tweet that I get, every mention, I'm pretty busy. I mean, it keeps me very busy.
Yeah.
So
when we talk about launches in your first book and Twitter and having all this stuff, obviously you got a little bit more visibility with your first one because of your massive Twitter following. Did that carry through to the second book, to the second release? Did you have the same success with book 2?
No, not the same success. By all standards of measure, it's a very successful book. But
absolutely,
was it as successful as Fluency? No. And I think some of that is communication. Like, are the people aware that it's there? A lot of people aren't aware that the sequel is out. Then there's also a huge section of people who will not read the second book until they know that the series is complete.
Right.
So there's people falling off from there. And there's some people who maybe just didn't like it as much as others. So, it's there's always going to be some attrition, with each novel in a series. And so that's, But like I said, it's paying the bills.
Oh yeah, and that's really all that matters when it comes
Yeah.
down to it. You
Yeah.
can pay your cell phone bill, you're successful. That's what I say.
Yeah, I would say it's in a lot of ways the reviews are better than Fluency's reviews. I think that I learned a lot. I mean, I learn and grow with each book, and I'm definitely always striving to be a better writer. In fact, my boyfriend is trying to convince me to do an MFA in creative writing because he wants me to be able to teach. He wants me to teach young impressionable writers and help them, be successful. So
right.
You can't teach unless you have a degree. So, and I have a bachelor's degree, but that's not good enough at the college level. So
yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
The MFAs always sound like more fun than they're going to be until you start. I mean, I've taken some classes here and there. And,
I feel like I'm too old to take classes. I don't know. We'll see.
My wife has a literature degree, and she talks about, reading a lot of the, there's a lot of boring stuff on there with some of the old English literature and things like that. And I know, well, I start naming names of some of those old time authors and stuff, but some of them are just not as entertaining as others.
True.
Like Shakespeare. I can't stand reading.
I like Shakespeare. I was thinking of James Joyce. What's the really super long?
Ulysses was his sort of epic.
That's like running an ultra marathon. It's like, can you survive reading?
Yeah, definitely.
So with your upcoming book, The Druid Gene, do you have any type of promotion that you're going to do for the launch or anything special, or are you just going to throw it out there and see what happens?
I always just throw it out there and see what happens. Yep. That's the way I do it.
A lot of people make their staple on BookBub. Do you do any type of advertising at all for your books, or is it all?
Yeah, I do. I do Kindle Countdown deals, usually 99-cent deals, about once every 6 months or so. I had a BookBub probably about 4 or 5 months ago on Fluency. BookBub is not interested in Remanence. I've applied several times. They're not interested. I think it's because they don't like to do second in series. They don't do that very often. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, they don't do them very often. So yeah, I mean, hopeful that, I mean, I will do those kind of things once I get some reviews and things like that.
Right.
But if you don't, in my opinion, if you don't get a BookBub, there's really no reason to advertise, to take the time to put something on sale, because you're just, you're not going to get nearly the sales as you would with BookBub. And so what I like to do is just keep holding out for BookBub and keep applying until I finally get in or whatever. I don't usually have any trouble getting in with Fluency.
It's very interesting. There's a lot of discussion among writers about different types of promoting and marketing and stuff. And I've been trying to educate myself, but what I'm learning is very few have much return on investment.
Right.
So you either have fans or you don't, and then how you get them, I guess, is anybody's guess. Sometimes it's a natural process. Sometimes you can reach out.
Yeah, most of I do have an email list that I keep in touch with whenever I have any kind of release. That's pretty much all organic for me. Like just people going to my website. I offer a free story in return, a free short story in return for signing up. And, I think I've got around 4,000 people on that list. It's not huge by any means, but it's all organic. So they are truly people who have sought out my website on their own and gotten there, without being pushed. I did try, there are some authors who are pushing, you do a Facebook ad and you get people to sign up by offering them free stuff. I tried that for a while. It didn't really work for me. It wasn't really, it wasn't generating enough leads to keep messing with it all the time.
And you got to be careful what you offer. If you offer like some of your stories, that might be okay. But if you offer like some other type of reward, people just sign up to get the free TV or whatever and then move on.
Yeah, that's a mistake. I did a giveaway once where I gave away an iPad, and that was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made.
Yeah.
It was all just people who coupon moms who,
Right.
who weren't interested.
I was getting ready to do that. I happened to read a blog post not to do that right before I pulled the trigger on. I was like, oh, I saved myself $100.
Now, Kindle might work better.
Right.
Kindle,
Something you can actually read on or through.
Do you see a lot of click through and follow high ratio on your list because it's all organic?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's the click-through rate is like, I don't know, 10 times higher than industry standard or something. I mean, it's
right.
It's like 50% or something.
And the industry standard, I think, is like 4%.
Yeah. 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 My click-through rate is something like 50% average or something. So it's,
oh, that's very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Busy people, but still, interested. So.
Do you so with this series, your foreseeable future is going to be in the Confluence universe. Do you have ideas to do any other science fiction or fantasy or do some other genres?
I have more ideas than I know what to do with. I keep a file of them. I can see myself doing fantasy, but only if the magic system is based on science in some way. Yeah, I mean, and that's being done. I've seen it done and it's done well, but I'm really more of a sci-fi space opera girl. I mean, space opera is my jam. So I can't really see myself straying too far from that, but I have lots of ideas for lots of different things. I have an idea for a story about a hacker. I have, oh gosh, I could just go on and on.
Any favorite authors in the genre right now that you read?
Okay. Yes, lots. I really like Nick Webb.
Okay.
Really like N.K. Jemisin. That's more fantasy. John Scalzi is a huge favorite. Let's see.
You mentioned Nick Webb. Are you?
Yeah.
I can't remember if you're part of the. Are you part of the anthology, the Legacy Fleet anthology? I couldn't remember if you were in that or not.
No, I know Nick sort of. I've never met him in person, but I know him sort of peripherally through Facebook groups and things. Great guy, really generous, nice guy. But no, I got to keep doing my own thing. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long before you finish your entire series? Because you'd mentioned before some people want to see the whole series finished before they start digging in.
That's a good question. The next book is so huge in scope that I'm concerned that it's going to end up being 2 books. And I don't, and so I'm really not sure how that's going to work out yet.
It's kind of what George R. R. Martin did.
I don't know. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't like ending mid book. That's not cool. Although I'm guilty of leaving cliffhangers, I do like to have a complete story. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't tell you. I do know that I'm going to work super hard to get the next Confluence book out by summer of 2017. Whether or not that will complete the series or not, I don't know.
Right.
It might end up being a 4-book series. I might end up, I have basically right now, I have planned out 3 major story arcs. And what I may end up doing is sort of subtracting out 1 or more of those and making those 2 separate books. So we'll see what happens.
Very cool.
We're looking forward to it. So tell us the time that you met George R. R. Martin.
Okay. So I was at at Worldcon, and it was not this past year, but the year before, and it was in Spokane, I think. Spokane. I'm probably saying it wrong. I don't even know.
I'm not the person to correct you. I'll tell you.
Oh, I'm sure someone will tell me.
Our entire viewership in Washington has now clicked off the feed.
Yeah. So I went there, and I'm a member of the Science Fiction Writers of America, which SFWA people say SIFWA. That's how we. That's
good.
Yes.
Good to know.
So I met my friend Annie Belay there at the
I got some.
con suite where they have a bouncer at the door who checks you in and says, oh, yes, you're a member of SIFWA, and here's your +1, and we'll check you off, and you can go in. So there was food, and it was early in the morning, and I was like, oh, they only had pod coffee, and I was like, oh, pod coffee.
Right.
Because I'm kind of a coffee snob. So I'm drinking the pod coffee, trying desperately to wake up, watching Annie chat up everybody and having a great time. And I'm sort of sitting there, and to my left, at the end of the table, there were sign-up sheets for people who would do this duty at the door, among other things like restocking the food and cleaning up and those kind of things for the SIFWA suite. So I'm sitting there kind of half out of it. I was just waking up, but it was probably 11 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
And I see this sort of dude out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I'd just been at a con. So I was like, oh, someone's doing George R.R. Martin cosplay. And then I'm sort of sitting there, and wheels are turning, coffee starts kicking, and I'm like, wait a minute. They have someone at the door. Only SIFWA members can get in here. That's not George R.R. Martin cosplay. That's George R.R. Martin. So I'm like, put the phone down. Don't let him think you're tweeting. Look, it is. It is. It really, really is. I'm sitting next to George R.R. Martin. Then he went off. He got himself some food. The guy sat down right next to me and ate 2 hot dogs.
Nice.
And drink some pod coffee.
And I sipped my pod coffee and just sort of tried not to talk too much. I didn't really say much at all. My friend Annie kept trying to engage me, like, she's writing this and she's doing that. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't so much that, I actually don't even read. I'm a big fan of the television series, but I haven't read the books because I'm not a fantasy reader.
Right.
But for me, it was like, it was the presence of such success, that success that he's right there, and he's written all these books and they're great. People love him and he's successful, and the TV show and all that. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And, so that's my story of how I met George R.R. Martin. He probably doesn't remember me. He probably meets lots of people like me every day.
He's probably telling that exact story right now on another podcast.
Right. The day I met Jennifer Wells, let me tell you, I was eating these hot dogs, and she had this horrible smelling coffee.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on the hour, and it's been a fantastic conversation. Like always, it's flown by.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any specific place where you want readers to find you or how they can interact with you?
Sure. I am active on 3 social media thingies. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @JenThulhu, which is JenThulhu. Same handle on Instagram. And on Facebook, I am Jennifer Foehner Wells. So you can find me there. And of course, my website is www.jenthulu.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming and watching the show. Jen, again, thank you for coming on the show. It was great to hang out and talk with you.
Fun time.
If you'll hang out for just 1 second, we'll stop the broadcast and get on with our day. Thanks everybody for watching again, and we'll see you on the next episode of Live.